Before you start, I left something for you in the show notes. If you've been creating content but not seeing it connect, or maybe not in the way that you hoped, the 3-minute Founder Voice quiz will show you why. And once you know your natural voice, everything you create becomes clearer and converts better. It's below. Take it before you forget. Now, let's begin.
I was thinking that I'm doing the business for my family, but what ended up happening, a business took over my life, and the family wasn't really part of it, kind of thing. I had a plan for the business, okay? So some kind of a business plan. And by the way, the business plan only involved me. So obviously that didn't work very well. But I never really had a plan or a vision for my life. So for the next year and a half, 2 years or so, I went into this optimistic depression. And I started looking from my own life. How did I get here? What happened? And the question that kept recurring in my mind, what the heck is wrong with me? When it comes to being successful in life and having the right mind, language is really important. What we say to ourselves, it matters, right? Because the language that we use, the words that are coming out of our mouth, creates our world. But if you get back to that authentic self and you discover that everything happens for me, then this business, this entrepreneurial, whatever it might be, becomes a lot simpler. Maybe not easier, but simpler.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. Today I've got a very special guest, Peter Kolat, the author of Authentic Self Rebirth. He is the creator of 7 Human Drives Framework. He's a transformational coach, affectionately known as the Polish Tony Robbins. He has coached thousands and spoken on over 100 stages and was named Transformational Coach of the Year in both 2022 and 2024. Peter, I'm so excited to have you here because you're going to speak to our entrepreneurs who are coming up against those limiting self-beliefs. I think this conversation is really going to help you, so stick around. But Peter, tell us, what's your mission and how did all of this start?
First and foremost, thank you for having me on this podcast. I really appreciate it. I love the kitchen title. We're cooking something really good today on this particular episode, aren't we? So the mission started is I want to empower people to actually get back to their true authentic self. What has happened over the years, whether it's the society, whether it's how you grew up, your parents, or whatever it might be, especially entrepreneurs, the world told you how you need to be. And without really knowing yourself, how to digest certain things, you just agreed to their version and you got away from your authenticity. So I want to get people back to their authenticity so they can really thrive, not only in their businesses, but in their lives as well.
Peter, because you've gone from being this underdog immigrant, trying to catch up, that's what you say in your own words, to someone who carries a message the world needs. You're coming from Poland, you're coming into America. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I came here when I was 14 years old, no English, just a suitcase in my hand. It was a communist Poland back then. And as I came here, I needed to learn a lot of different things, just the language itself. So there's a whole story behind that. But throughout my life, things that happened for me now, as opposed to me, I was able to go and see how I can learn about human mind, human behavior, and why do we do the things that we do. And now I truly just want to help other people to be able to awaken and be able to see for themselves how is it that they end up where they're at and shift something in their own lives so they can thrive, like I said, in their lives and in their businesses.
Peter, you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. What is the common self-limiting beliefs that you encounter time and time again? And maybe as yourself growing your business that you came across? I'd love to know that.
One of the biggest ones that I see is I can do it myself, or I have to do it myself because nobody's going to do it as good as me. And I think there is the belief that we all learn at some point. I learned it from my own uncle when I was growing up. I was living with my uncle between the ages of 8 and 14. And growing up, I watched him in his own workshop build everything himself. So I, in turn, embodied that belief myself that I have to do everything myself. So when I first started my first business back in the day in 2007, I was doing everything myself. So that's one big belief that people have. And what I had to do is let go of that belief and start looking from the perspective if there's probably people that are smarter than me, people who can do certain aspects of my business in a much better way than me, And even if they just do 80% of what I think I can do, that's good enough. Because then was the other belief that very close to it, that I have to do everything perfect. Like it has to be done perfect. That's another belief that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. For me, it came from the perspective because I used to be an architect back in the day. So in architecture, you have to make things perfect, right? Everything has to be aligned exactly how it needs to be. So those two beliefs really shaped the business in a way that I was doing everything myself and it was hard for the business to grow. In fact, it took over my entire life. So for the entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting off in the business, this is the beliefs that I see most frequently to plague their businesses, not be able to actually grow the business because I have to do everything myself and nobody can do it as good as me. So the thing is, you have to be able to let go of those beliefs. And if you let go of those beliefs, you have to embody a new type of a belief. The way I start looking from the business perspective, it's a e-business as opposed to me business. When I started embodying the we business, I started bringing people into different tasks in my business. I started with like VAs and helped me grow the business to a certain level and then level up from that and so forth. And in order to be able to do that, I had to grow up as a leader in my business as well. So there is a lot of growing, obviously, but throughout that growth, you have to let go of the old beliefs in order to bring in the new ones that will support you and your business.
Interesting that you talked about being an architect, because when you were describing it, I actually realized it sounds like an artist's way. An artist wants to paint every stroke, every color, finds delight and takes pride in the hands-on and the doing and the creating, and then making that shift to, okay, if you're going to be a business owner, from me to we, from artists to now being a CEO, founder, you start bringing on these VAs, and you've been a person who's been holding on to everything yourself. What was the first kind of point where you said to yourself, okay, something's got to change about that shift from me to we?
Yeah, so what the point that happened for me was back in 2010, 2011. I had my business, I was doing everything myself, and I was teaching real estate investors and agents how to market their businesses on the internet. And I had my own course, and I was helping people, and I was developing businesses and selling a course. So I was doing pretty good. It wasn't like wildly successful, but it was pretty good business. I was making money, supporting my life. And one day I came home from one of the events, and my wife, I felt like there was something off about her. Like I asked her, "What's the problem? What's going on?" And after asking her several times, like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" She goes, "I'll tell you what's wrong." And she said, "I want a divorce." And in that moment, it really like hit me like, what did I do? So for the next year and a half, 2 years or so, I went into this optimistic depression. And I started looking from my own life. How did I get here? What happened? And the question that I kept recurring in my mind, what the heck is wrong with me? And during that process, I discovered for myself that I was doing everything myself. So something had to change because obviously, since I'm in this particular space where I'm at, it's not working, right? So when something's to change. So I started learning a lot about myself, have this kind of like an awakening period and learning like, what are these blind spots that I have in my life that got me here? And like, in fact, one of them was I discovered, I was 35 at the time, I think. I discovered I was a people pleaser. And I'm like, what? Who would have thought that it would take me 35 years to figure out I'm a people pleaser? But that's one of those blind spots that allowed me to go and say, you know what, maybe doing it myself is not the right answer. And I started reaching out for mentors, looking for people that have been there, done that, and start learning from those mentors and coaches how I can actually grow the business as a we as opposed to me. So it was a big, impactful moment in my life. And I think sometimes people, when they have this kind of impactful moments, they finally say, you know what, something's got to change. I don't wish it on anybody, but I think that sometimes like the impactful moments have to happen in order for us to make a change in our lives.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I can see how it can happen to so many people where you're very much running a business, building a business. It takes up all of your mental, your emotional, your everything. And if you're doing everything yourself, and so many people do experience that, where the business is constantly running in your mind. You may be with the family, but you're not with the family mentally, and how that can affect relationships and people want to be seen. When I read that about you, I said you've reached such a level of self-awareness because I read how you described your wife at that time. That I think you said she mentioned that the person that was in the business that everybody loved and was celebrated and things were going well, she was not experiencing that person or something to that effect.
Yeah, I wasn't present in life. No, I wasn't there. I was doing the business because I was thinking that I'm doing the business for my family. But what ended up happening, a business took over my life and the family wasn't really part of it kind of thing. I would spend all nighters working on the business. So what happens the next day when you spend all night? You're very exhausted, you're tired, so you can't be there with your kids like they were supposed to be, right? So bringing that intentionality throughout my life to be present in a very moment with everybody that I'm with, like right now I'm talking to you, being 100% present with you, is one of those things that I had to put in my life to make a difference for people and for myself and actually be more productive in life.
That's a difficult thing to do, Peter. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the people who are listening at that point where it's, how do you balance being everywhere? Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for sharing how you've come out on the other side to share this with other people who may be going through this. And I'm interested to
Yeah.
know some of the things that you changed. You said, the present, knowing that when you're somewhere, you should be fully present. And how now
Mhm.
do you juggle everything?
Here's how I basically operate. Back in the day, when I had that business, the first business, I had a plan for the business. Okay, so some kind of a business plan. And by the way, the business plan only involved me. So obviously that didn't work very well. But I never really had a plan or a vision for my life. And when I came in after my divorce, I went into this company called Life on Air, and they were like, listen, you got to figure out what you want your life to look like first. So I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? That means what you want your relationships to look like, your relationship with your kids, with your wife, your spiritual life, your health, hobbies, if you have any, or whatever it might be, right? Figure that part out and put it on paper in the present tense, like you are living that right now. When you do that, the next thing you need to do is see how that would actually play out in a calendar. So, what does that look like as far as on a daily basis? So, I put down in the morning when I first get up, I'm spending time with the Lord. Then I figure out for myself at 3:30 in the afternoon, I would be going to the gym because health was really important to me. So, I want to do that. So, I put those different things in my calendar. You with me so far? So, what ended up happening after I put all the life things in the calendar, I was left with some blank spaces. And those blank spaces were left for what? For business. And the number of blank spaces that was left for business was about 22 that I had for myself, 22 hours a week. So now, between hours of 10 and 2:30, those were left for business. And I had to work like my hair is on fire during that time in order for that to work. Does that make sense? Because I created like these bookmarks for myself. So, in order for me to do that, I had to be very intentional during that time on the business and not to do certain things that were wasting my time. Let's say scrolling on Facebooks or whatever it might be. So, I had to be working on the most important things in my business. Now, what I also had to learn that in my mind, in order for me to be present during the different things in my life, I had to learn this that everything that is in front of me right now is the most important thing right now in this very moment. Because think about it this way, why do our minds go back to all these different things that we need to do? Because let's say I forgot to send out an email to the client that I told them that I'm going to send out an email. First thing I should have written on a paper that I had to send out to the email to the client so that my mind doesn't keep thinking about it. Because guess what? Once it's on the paper, I don't have to think about it. So that's number one. Number two, that email, the reason why my mind is going to that email to send it out to the client, because in that very moment, I'm thinking that email is more important to what I'm doing right now. But if I put on this thinking cap that thinks that whatever I'm doing right now is the most important thing, because I have a plan I have these bookmarks, I have things in my calendar that when I get to, that will be the most important thing. So I had to switch my mind about whatever is in the moment is the most important thing. Does that make sense? Because then that allowed me to be present with my wife, present with my kids, present with my business, present with my workout, present with my time with the Lord. And that actually made me much more effective rather than just running around like with a chicken with the head cut off.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that because that happens to a lot of us. It's like your mind is just running wild. And, those practices for you to take control of your thoughts and how you prioritize your day.
Here's a little simple strategy that you can do. If you have 20,000 things in your mind that you have to think about, go ahead and call it brain dump, and you dump it all out on paper. Because one of the reasons why you're thinking mind is going 20 different ways because it's worrying that it's going to forget it. So it's constantly has to think about those kinds of things. But when you put it on paper, guess what? You're not going to forget it anymore. So it gives your mind a chance to just relax and not just to think about, not constantly going. So that's a little strategy I've shared with my students. That's helped them to be more present in life because, I have to think about this. It's already there.
Yeah, so good. And I find if it's on paper, it's going to get done. You just find, even if you're not constantly checking the paper, you realize you've gone through the whole list of the things you wrote. Writing down is important. Now, you say that when you were going through you found that personal development was wanting. What did you mean by that? Because a lot of people are crazy about personal development. So I wanted you to get into that.
Not only that, so I have a little issue with the personal development space. And by the way, I'm the guy who's constantly learning about human behavior in the personal development space, right? I've read probably 1,000 books in the personal development space. Here's my issue. When it comes to being successful in life and having the right mind, language is really important. What we say to ourselves, it matters, right? Because the language that we use, the words that are coming out of our mouth, creates our world. If you don't know what that means, just think about like English language. Every single word has some kind of a meaning associated to that word in order for us to make sense of the world, right? Like in the word book, what does that mean? The book means that this is something that we look into, we read it, and we learn something from it, right? There's some kind of meaning associated with it. So when it comes to personal development space, one word in particular that I have a kind of an issue with is the word mindset. It's been used about, 30 million times right now, and we constantly talk about mindset. Now here's the problem. If you look at the word, actually digest the word, it's made up of two words, mind and set. So are you possibly telling your mind on the subconscious level that your mind is set? Mind set, mind is set. And then you're trying to what? Change that mindset. And think about it this way. When it comes to thinking, we don't change, we shift our thinking. If I told you right now, think about the huge purple elephant. Your mind all of a sudden creates a picture. There is a big, huge purple elephant, correct? Now, if I say, let's get back to the podcast and talk about how the mind shifts all the time, and one of the things that we talk about is, let's say, the book. Now, all of a sudden, you're thinking about the book. So what happened? Did you change your mind, or did you just shift your thinking? And we do this all the time. So when we start to really get clear on how we think and what we do and the reasons why we do it and the meaning that's associated with everything we do in life, all of a sudden we are much more empowered to actually make the shifts in our lives that makes us successful. We don't have to change, and we don't have to try. By the way, you can't try. That's another word in English language that we just created, I think, to make ourselves feel better. That we try something and it didn't work. But if you really think about it, you either do it or you don't. And that's all there is to it. I could go on and on.
I like that one. The idea that it's just a shift. And then it's not the big thing of, I've got to change my mindset. It's like, shift your mind.
We do it all the time.
You have the power to do that. You could do it with ease. Yeah. So just shift your mind. I like that. It's a different take. Your book is called Authentic Self Rebirth. And I'd like to know, when people finish that book, what's the one sentence or the one takeaway you want them to walk away with?
Great question. I love that. That life happens for me. Everything happens for me. Everything happens for me. Because when they finally discover it, then everything happens for me. That means that it's part of that getting back to the authenticity of them. Because I want people to be able to get back to their true self, to their authentic self. And one of the reasons why over the last few years there have been so much uncertainty in the world, and people are worried about how do I go about doing this, and especially in entrepreneurs, there's so much uncertainty. But if you get back to that authentic self and you discover that everything happens for me, then this business, this entrepreneurial, whatever it might be, becomes a lot simpler. Maybe not easier, but simpler. And you start to actually not be so worrying about life. Like, I know that I don't have any certainty about anything in life. I don't have any control over anything. You know what I mean? But if I look from the perspective of everything happens for me, man, life gets a lot better.
I wonder when you say authentic self, what do you mean? Because people hear that word a lot. And I hear that authentic self and I look at, people in the founder entrepreneur space, people who have a way that sort of brushes people the wrong way. And they're okay with that.
Yeah.
You wonder if that's that understanding of your own self.
Yeah, there is a misconception about it. So what I mean by that is this. Think about when you were born, and it depends what your faith is, what your walk is. If you believe in God, that says that God made you in his image, right? If you are looking from the universal perspective, you came into this life and think about it before the world told you how you need to be. So that's before, let's say, 6, 7, 8 years old. If you look at a 3, 4, 5-year-old, I don't know if you ever seen, do you have any kids?
I've got 2, so I know that age very well.
3, 4, 5 years old, right? Think about this. Tell me that 3, 4, 5-year-old, are they fearless or they're fearful?
Fearless.
They're fearless.
Yeah.
They're unstoppable, right? Tell that 4-year-old that you can have ice cream at 11 o'clock at night, and that 4-year-old will convince you that ice cream is necessary at 11 o'clock at night. They're unstoppable. They're fearless. They're curious, right? They're loving. It's a way of being that's being the authentic self. You know what I mean? And I don't believe that, let's say, someone who is very abrasive, I don't think that's being authentic. I think that is something that the person learned over the years, that if they be that way, they can survive or they can thrive or whatever it might be. But if you go back to those, just look at being fearless, authentic, unstoppable, curious, loving, that version of you back then, guess what? Now when it comes to running a business or being a mom or being a dad or being a husband or wife, you just become a lot more empowered to do all kinds of different things. So that's what I mean about authenticity.
I love that you peel that back because, like you said, a lot of that is survival learned. And so a lot of times we're walking around in survival mode, thinking that's the authentic self. And yet, like you said, you look at a 4-year-old, you take them swimming, you actually have to watch them like a hawk because they believe they can do anything in that pool.
Right. And think about it like people pleaser. I learned that at the age of 8, and I can give you the exact moment when that spark was created of me being a people pleaser. I remember that, okay? Now, that people pleaser is a survival mechanism for us in order to what? To be liked, to be loved, to be appreciated, whatever it might be, right? But up to that point, I was just being me kind of a thing from that perspective what we just talked about. Think about like labels that we put on people are about introvert or an extrovert. Have you ever met a 4-year-old that's either introverted or extroverted? No, they're just being themselves. And then we put different labels in order to figure out this world, in order to survive. So it's not a survival mechanism. Authenticity is thriving. It's abundance, those kinds of things.
So much to think about there. And I love it. And I love that's what your book talks about. Now, Peter, take us into sort of the 7 human drives framework. I know you've described it as a soul level version of Tony Robbins. I like that. Maybe you could share with us maybe 3, just at a high level, of those human drives.
Yeah, so first and foremost, every single human being needs to meet every single one of these drives on some level. And one of the reasons was to be able to survive in this life. So one of them I'll give you, for example, is the drive for significance, for feeling important, feeling like I matter. And how does this show up in people's lives? Those types of people who that drive is really high for them. It's like one of the top drives for them. What they're constantly looking for is being important, feeling like they matter. So they want to be acknowledged. They don't like to feel like they're attacked. They don't want to have to defend themselves. So when it comes to, let's say, an entrepreneurial side, they're the ones who want to do things that they're in the middle of the crowd, right? For instance, I don't know if you ever met someone who wants to be in the middle of everything. They're the ones who make decisions. They're the ones who are the fun people, or they're the ones who are always saying, let's go do this, or they want to be acknowledged for things. So that is a need for that drive for significance. Now, the problem with that one is that if they get in trouble, they go and start to defend themselves. So in the relationships or in the business, it doesn't work very well because guess what? It's not thriving. It's a survival mechanism. Another one is this drive for connection. Some people have a really high drive to be connected. That means that they don't like being by themselves. They want to be connected with other people. They want to be around other people. Sometimes they don't even care what they end up doing with people, like in a group, like with friends. They just want to hang out. So, in some level, people may look at them as they're being very needy. Have you ever met someone that's very needy? But if you really discover that is their top drive, all they want is a connection. Now, when it comes to what they want to do in life, let's say what they're passionate about, if that is one of their top drives, they're probably going to thrive a lot more if they're doing something that includes other people. So having a business on the internet when you're sitting behind the computer 24/7 is not going to do you very well. If you want to go to the gym and start working out and you go and do gym by yourself, you're not going to be in there for a very long time. You should probably have a partner or go in a workout like a group. So when you know these drives, and actually in the book I have a test that they can take assessment for free to be able to figure out what their top drives are, then you start to know, how do I operate in life? What is important to me to be able to go and thrive? And then when you start looking from the perspective of other people, like an employees or clients, and you know what their top drives are, you know how to talk to them and how to get them to understand you better and you understanding them as well. Does that make sense?
So many situations where people wonder, how can I connect with this person, even at a social level, where it's, oh, I don't know if they want to go to a movie or if they don't want to go to a movie. But if you understand what is of greatest importance to them, what's driving them, then you can easily know your employees, to know the people you do business with, to know your friends, to know your family, to know yourself. I like that you talked about maybe if you feel your business is draining you, is it appealing to what is most important to you, the thing that drives you most? So I can see so many powerful applications for this. It sounds really amazing, Peter. Now that you've told me that so many people have one dominant human drive, what is yours, Peter?
When I first started this, it used to be that significance. That's why I'm so well versed in the significance. However, over the years, what I believe now is contribution, and strong behind that is the drive for faith. So I love to contribute people. I love seeing people thrive in life. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a coach and I'm a mentor and investor, because I want to see others thrive. So the contribution is my top drive, and very close by is faith, because I think we all need to have some kind of faith in something bigger than us, something that's more impactful than us, something there is a purpose behind it. Those are the top drives for me. I know I just talked about two or three of them, but do you see in yourself in any of those drives?
I think contribution is mine, because when you're talking about it, when I help other people, that really fires me up. That's very important to me. But I never had the language to know that's what it is. But when you were talking, I realized, oh, that sounds a lot like me. That's why I enjoy helping entrepreneurs. It gives me something. Thank you so much for sharing that, Peter. Now, I know that we're almost at the end of our time, and I wanted to know if we can just do a quick 4-question rapid fire round. The first question is, a limiting belief you held before you did the work to return to your authentic self. I think you've mentioned it.
Like I said, I have to do everything myself and it's got to be perfect. And I already mentioned about my uncle and growing up. But what I had to figure out is, why is that? And that's something, the bigger why that had me let go of that belief. And now I would say we business as opposed to me business. And I constantly look from the perspective of contributing to others. When contributing to others, I'm open to hiring other people, right? I'm open to helping other people and their families and things like that.
It's like, one is like you're gripping. Your life is a whole grip. And then you release, and you release everything. I like that, Peter. If you had to choose only one of the 7 human drives in your framework, what would it be and why? If you said, of all the people you've met, you've coached, common thread, one of the human drives.
Oh, that's a very difficult question, because if I just pick one drive, what ends up happening sometimes with people when they end up taking it in a negative way, meaning like it starts working against them because they don't see them, really. But if I had to pick, it would probably be the drive for faith. Because like for me, I'm Christian, right? God is really important to me. So if I look from the perspective of faith and I'm working in alignment with the Lord, then I'm good. You know what I mean? And life doesn't suck in a very short way. But that would be the one I think that would pick.
If you lost everything tomorrow and you had to start all over again, what belief, shifting your mind, not mind, shifting your mind, what belief do you think would be the most important in building yourself up?
Everything happens for me. And the reason why I say this is because when I look from the perspective of everything happens for me, I would have to look in that particular moment. Okay, look for that silver lining there. Is there something here that I can learn? What is this teaching me? What's the thing that's happening for me in this moment? And even if it's a tiny little thing that I can find that spark, it will help me get out of the space of why did that happen to me? You know what I mean? So that one belief that everything happens for me allows me to look for that small inkling in those moments that will get me out of this, I call it stinking thinking, or this space where you lose everything.
Find the spark. And for Christian entrepreneurs, fan that spark into a flame. I like that, Peter.
I love that, what you just said there.
Peter, I know your book is Authentic Self Rebirth. What are you most excited about going forward and in the marketplaces you look out there in terms of how you serve your people and what there is for people to look forward to as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, what I'm really most excited about is I've got messages from people saying how the book is changing their lives or shifting their lives. And that's what I truly just want to shift the narrative in people's lives, because I think we're much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. From entrepreneurs, if they could just take something out of that book or just knows for themselves from this particular episode that I can make things happen and everything happens for me and something shifts in their mind, that's awesome. That's all I want. I want to shift one entrepreneur at a time, kind of a thing, to help them live their life so they can support their families and make an amazing life for themselves.
Thank you so much for that, Peter. I think to the audience that's listening, there's been so much value shared with us, Peter. You know, everything from if you're in a dark place, find the spark. And if things are getting heavy, maybe you're operating in survival mode. Read Peter's book, Authentic Self Rebirth. Go back to connecting with your authentic self. And Peter, you've shared such an amazing story of how you've gone just through so many things and you've come out with just the heart to contribute and to serve other people, which is amazing. And to the audience, if you'd like to learn more about Peter, please go to myauthenticrebirth.com. Peter, are you active online?
Yes, I am.
Where are you active?
Online, Instagram, I have a channel called Authentic Self Rebirth, and I share all kinds of different strategies on there, like 90-second reels from what we just talked about. myauthenticrebirth.com is that website where you can pick up the book. They can buy it actually anywhere the books are available, whether it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and YouTube, Facebook. You just look for Polish Peter and you'll find me somewhere there. Or just type it in Google, Polish Peter, you'll find me there.
Heck yeah, I love it. Polish Peter, Peter Kolat, we're so happy to have you here. Peter, is there something that I should have asked or a message you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would just say, never give up. I think that's so understated, in today's world, because there are so many distractions and squirrels that are happening that cause us to give up or what we were like. If you feel deep down inside that this is your calling, that this is what you're supposed to go after, never give up on that. Because I think ultimately you'll be able to break through something to get to the other side and win. If I give up in life, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So I would just say never give up. Never give up. Did I say never give up? Never give up. That's all I will say.
Thank you so much, Peter. As you heard it, never give up. Thank you so much.